Welcome to the Protagonist Pub. My name is Tammy, and this is where characters gather. Today, we are going to talk about The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. This was my book club's January pick, and I understand it had been immensely popular when it was released. I do not understand why. This is a very bad book. There is no objective reason that anyone would like this book. I do not understand. I cannot fathom why this book was popular. I cannot fathom why the majority of my book group loves this book. Everyone's entitled to different opinions. I just do not understand this one. It is very clear from the opening chapter that the narrator is not only unreliable, he's also the perpetrator. So he's not the protagonist, he's the antagonist. Which is fine. I don't have a problem being the antagonist, having a story told from the antagonist's point of view. That is a perfectly acceptable method of storytelling. In fact, it makes for great stories. It doesn't make for a great story here. The writer is lazy. He does not trust his readers. He does not trust that his readers have the intelligence to work things out. So, because he doesn't trust his readers, he doesn't show you, he does not show you the clues and allow his reader to go on a journey to discover the story. Instead, he info dumps on the reader. He tells them straight up from the beginning. The narration begins with, I came from an abusive home. My father beat me. I tried to kill myself. I was a horrible human being. I have been in therapy for a very long time. And it just goes on and on and on. And then you get to the meat of the story. So the premise of the story is this woman, so unforgettable, I've forgotten her name now. I believe it's Allison. Let me check. Alicia. Alicia shoots her husband in the face 5 times. And then never speaks another word. It's a decent premise. Sounds promising. Right? She's convicted. She's sent to a mental institution. And here's where the problems begin. Well, other than the problems that began in the prologue. The narrator is a psychologist who has a perfectly respectable job at a perfectly respectable hospital, but an opening for a physician shows up in the mental prison that Alicia is being housed. He decides he wants that position. Interviews for it. Gives a couple of BS answers in his interview. And people around him are like, you know that mental hospital prison is probably slated for closure within the year. What are you doing? He's like, oh, no, I can save her. Red flag number 1. He has a God complex. So, he gets the job. He starts off, and the problems in the book begin to make themselves manifestively clear immediately. The man has no professional ethics. No one he works with has any professional ethics. Huge sore point for me, obviously. He manages to get himself assigned to Alicia's case. And then you learn that he, 6 years ago, Alicia was an artist before she shot her husband. He went to a gallery showing of Alicia's last work. And he was just mesmerized by it. And you can hear the attraction and the obsession in the way he describes things. So he meets Alicia for the first time in prison. She says nothing. He talks to her. He starts spilling his guts to his patient, which, again, who does that if you're in that role? And session concludes. She never says a word. She barely looks at him. He talks to his colleagues, and they're like, well, if you want more information, you should go talk to so-and-so. Thus begins problem number 2. Every time he goes to talk to so-and-so, which is, by the way, well outside of his scope of professional responsibility, ethics, all of it. So-and-so goes, oh, by the way, I can't tell you anything, but go talk to these people and I'm sure they have something to tell you. One of those people he gets sent to is Alicia's brother-in-law, who just happens to be a partner at the firm that represented her during the court case, and thus is her defense lawyers of record. Here I have a very big ethical problem, because her brother-in-law, who didn't represent her in court, but is professionally bound by keeping his mouth shut, blabs all about her. Just has no sense of family loyalty. Sure. His sister-in-law has been convicted of killing his brother, but at this point, it's been made clear that his brother really loved his sister-in-law. And then he breaches his professional ethics. And while he doesn't divulge specific tidbits, he leaves just enough of a trail that the antagonist / protagonist can go to the next person. It's so entertaining. It's just infuriating. And this happens repeatedly. It happens throughout the book. It is so incredibly lazy on the part of the author. He doesn't lay clues. He tells the reader what is happening over and over and over again. And then we get to the next big problem. Alicia's diary. Pages and pages and pages of her diary about how much she loves her husband and how she'll do anything to keep him, and how there's some guy stalking her but no one believes her. It goes on for multiple pages, and once again, it's nothing more than an info dump, because the author lacks the skill or the will to actually show the reader what's happening. He'd rather just tell you in a diary page. It's just lazy and infuriating. Eventually, the protagonist gets Alicia off the psychiatric drug she's been on, and she speaks. And he celebrates this fact to his colleagues. And then she, physically attacks people, including him. And she goes back on the drugs. Bunch of nonsense happens, yet more showing, not telling. And eventually things come to a head, and it appears that Alicia has killed herself or committed suicide and is not expected to live. And then, the shocking twist is revealed when the police investigate her alleged suicide attempt and find her diary. And there's one final entry that the protagonist didn't read because she had just written it after the suicide attempt. And it points to the killer. I have so many issues with this book. It was not good. It was not well written. It was not entertaining. It was incredibly frustrating. I enjoy my book group. I enjoy the ladies in the book group. I only read this book from cover to cover because of them. Had I picked this up on my own, I would have DNF'd this book in less than 50 pages. I was so infuriated, I kept putting the book down and just venting at my husband so that I could continue to read the book. It is objectively not worth your time investment. I know he has a second book out. It's The Maidens. I will insert a picture here. I was mildly interested in reading that one before I read this. I will not read this. I have no desire to pick up anything by him again. I will be unhauling this book to my library. I cannot recommend it. I would say actively avoid anything he writes. I don't say that lightly. I don't say it often. And I wouldn't feel this strongly had I DNF'd the book. But I read the whole thing. This book is for people who don't regularly read mysteries and who don't know how, and thus they don't have the experience to follow the clues to come up with a conclusion on their own. And as a result, the author just shows you and doesn't tell you and allow you to come on the journey. He just takes you on a Mr. Toad's Wild Ride adventure to the end. If it's in your library, check it out. You can decide for yourself. I do not recommend buying this book. I do not recommend spending your hard-earned cash on a book that's this bad. There is nothing about this book that should be enjoyed by anyone who reads consistently. If I could give it 0 stars, I would. If I could give it 0 stars, I would. I will give it a very begrudgingly 1 star. And I will be glad to donate to the library at the end of the month. Please like and subscribe to this video and leave your comments down below. And I look forward to our next conversation.